Johan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, the topic for this talk is how to do tracking in a single page application, specifically using Next.js. And first off, about me. My name is Johan Westin, and I started building web back in 2004. And I've been working together with some Matomo clients, such as Swedish Skatteverket and SL, the one they are running the buses and the trains in Stockholm at Whitespace. And I'm responsible for both small and large installations of Matomo. And I'm very focused on the technology that makes Matomo run, and I'm a huge fan of everything open source. So the topic for today, when we submitted this talk, the idea was to provide the absolute best way to do the tracking, what plugins to use, what plugins not to use, and bring some clarity into it. But the more I researched and dug into this, the more I saw that maybe this isn't really a solved problem yet, and we do have some issues and some great opportunities ahead. So the focus today is, why is this a problem? Why is it so hard to do this correctly? Then we're gonna look at some libraries and different techniques that you can use to actually implement tracking on an Next.js or other SPA application. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the future, what might happen, what can we do, how can we improve things. And then we're going to open up for questions or other considerations. So let's talk. Why is it so hard to get right? Well, doing tracking with Matomo on a normal or an older web page, it's usually connected to the page views. And a page view is always a page view, more or less. When having a single page application such as Next.js, or if you're using Gatsby or any other React-based framework, you have page views, and you also have page views that are more virtual page views. You want to send an event to Matomo that there is a page view, but the browser doesn't really know that you have changed the page for the user. You have the same problem if you are doing tracking in a mobile app, for example. You have to decide when are we changing the page and when are we not. In Next.js, we can see that clicking on a link doesn't always trigger a reload if the page is cached, for instance. And we also have problems with URLs and the titles for the page. The URL isn't always the correct URL. You might see something in the browser that looks like it's correct. You can copy it and you can use it. But when the Matomo script tries to pick it up, it doesn't really get the correct URL for the second page view. So you have to change it by telling Matomo, we are on a different page now. This is the new URL instead. So, and those are usually the main two problems. The other problem is that you get maybe a double registration. You have a method that looks back into the history and says, okay, you changed history, so now we have a new page view. You also have a lot of problems with you're not registering all the page view. You might have you have a registration form and you want a new page view for each step in the form. But the tracking script doesn't know that there is a new step, so you have to manually add those in somehow. And when looking into this, we can see we have 3 different approaches. You can use a plugin for Next.js. There is one right now that is called Matomo Next from SocialGov. I think that is like the French French government initiative somehow. You can also add script tags using Matomo's tag manager and try to implement the logic that listens for page changes and history changes that way. You can also create your own implementation and following the guide that you can see on developer.matomo.org for single page applications. And we're going to look into those three today a little bit more. So starting with the first one, the Next.js plugin. It's solid plugin. It works great for Next.js, but not if you are using the new app route method. It only works if you are using the old pages route. It uses a method where it connects itself to two different events called route change start and route change complete. And those events are not present using that new app route instead. So if you are trying to follow, for instance, using Next.js 14 and follow the recommended way to implement a new site, this plugin won't really work for you. And there are some patches, some pull requests open on GitHub when people have explored the different ways forward, how they can implement tracking still using this plugin. But the problem here is that even when the plugin works, you don't really have support for all the things that Matomo can do. You don't have an easy way to create custom events. You don't have the custom variables and so forth. So you still need to do a lot of manual work. But we can probably make it like an effort and try to add this onto the plugin and create a better version that works better with new version of Next.js. That is probably one very good way forward, or you can adapt it to your specific needs instead. Looking at another way is using the Matomo tag manager together with Next.js. This works by using the history change trigger and the page view trigger in concert with each other. And you can create a Matomo analytics tag within Matomo tag manager. And in that configuration, you can tell it that it should use two different variables called page title or page URL, for instance. And you needed to tell it explicitly to execute this Matomo analytics tag when history is changed and when a page view is happening. And you need also to enter into your code at the correct place, call the push event for the page view to trigger it. And you also need to make sure that it doesn't trigger twice, since you are also using the history change. So there is a lot of logic you need to add into the tag manager for this to work. You also need a way to set the custom title and the custom page URL using the API provided by Matomo for this. This can be, it's quite straightforward, but it feels like you have to do a lot of manual work and it's easy to get it wrong, especially the last part when it triggers twice sometimes. So it doesn't really feel like an optimal solution. Oops. The third alternative, and the one that we have been experimenting with the most, is actually implementing it on your own. Because the basic idea is that you need to load the Matomo.js file and then just call set custom URL, set document title, and track the page view. And this looks at first glance like a very simple and efficient solution to actually getting the tracking done, until you realize that, oh, I want to make sure that the script tag is loaded in the head tag. And I want to make sure that the script tag isn't blocking any rendering. And I need to make sure that the client is running only, the code is running only on the client. And I need to make sure that the referrals are correct, and more. And the list never ends, especially if you are using any premium plugins, because then you need to make sure that those are loaded as well. And that goes basically for all the solutions, that different plugins might make it even more complicated for this to work. If you want form tracking, media analytics, or you are using heat maps or session recordings and all of that. So it's not always as simple as it looks. So what can we do? How can we improve this situation? Are there any way forward? Right now, there is not a really clear way forward for tracking an exit app using the app routing functions. Vercel are doing some very interesting things that they have implemented into the Next.js platform directly, using the third-party Google and how they are setting up tracking with Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. And I think we need a way forward that gives us the ability to do the same thing, but for Matomo or any other open source tracking platform. And we need to make sure that it's not a foot gun. It should not be a very easy way to do everything the wrong way. And we don't need any more implementations that looks very easy to install and to use, and also looks like they are working perfectly fine, until you realize that it's not collecting the correct data or all the data. Another thing to add to that is also that we need to make sure that all the cookie consent and the permissions to actually track the user are also respected and stored correctly. Most sites need a way to make tracking happen, or to block tracking for some users, or even to remove the cookie and do cookieless tracking as well. And I think this is something of a work in progress for us as the community, to bring this forward and to try and figure out how can we not be left behind by Vercel or the other competitors that aren't using Matomo or another similar platform. So there is definitely a lot of work to do, but I think we are at like a great point in time where a lot of different organizations and companies are starting to look into this, and to see that we need to pool our resources to make this work for Matomo as well. So some links I've been using for this, some references. We have the Matomo's guide, the guide for single page application tracking is quite good. A lot of information about how to implement tracking if you want to do it on your own. We also have the third-party libraries from Next.js, where you can see some examples for how they are implementing using the script tags and the next script tags. That is kind of the recommended way for Next.js to do it. you also have a link here to the issue where you can read about the social gov Matomo Next problem, the pull request. I think it is not an issue. And then we also have the link to the Matomo Next source files. And I think that was the presentation part. And I would like to have more of a questions and answers session. So just write your questions in the chat, and we will try to answer them for you. I think that Thomas has already asked a question. The question is, I would like to help out with making Matomo Tag Manager even easier here. What would be your biggest wish? Well, my biggest wish for making Matomo Tag Manager easier would be a way to share recipes so that one person can do something brilliant and another person can use it in a simple way. We do have the import and export functions for like a version of the tag manager, but a simpler way to import and export a small part, I think, would be a great addition to the tag manager.
Thank you, Johan. So we are way ahead of time, so I think we're gonna keep on continuing the discussion. Here, I think the question of Thomas is of paramount importance. So maybe more on the Matomo side is like, I'm personally identifying lots of ways to improve Matomo Tag Manager. In addition to this big number one thing that you think will be very valuable to have within Matomo Tag Manager, will you be okay to share with us, let's say, the list of all the additional needs that you think will be very valuable within Matomo Tag Manager?
Do you mean like other things that we can do to improve Tag Manager right now?
Yeah, which are very important. So far as I understood, you mentioned the possibility of a community gallery. Am I correct? Which will be able to pick up any custom trigger, any custom tag with, I guess, securities around this. So not only custom HTML, but proper templates in order to speed up, let's say, the production of secure template. And yeah, I just would like this list to keep on going so that I can clearly send this wish list, let's say, to the team internally so that they can have a clear idea about what are the priority from an expert point of view.
I think one big thing on that list should be a more dynamic way to create new tags and new triggers. You have the interface today, but usually when we are working and we have different clients that we are working with, we need an ability to create like a repository of knowledge. It can be a community-based repository where we can share with each other, or maybe even a private repository when you can share with yourself from different sites within one installation, or maybe even different installations. That would be nice. There is also a need for a more robust preview function, I think. We have a lot of issues with the preview functions when you're using different domains or when you are running on a multi-site installation to getting it to work. So that is also something that can be improved. We can see a lot of good examples from other platforms. Another nice thing to have would be more libraries that are already verified and complete for instance, React or Next.js or any other popular platform, where you can just install it and make sure that, well, okay, this is the standardized way to do this, and it's been approved by Inocraft or somebody else that is part of the core development team for implementing it. And it should also have the hooks and the code already ready for all the plugins that you can have with Matomo. All the premium plugins as well would be great.
Would you say that workspaces is not a need then, or where would you put it on the list of priorities for future development for Matomo Tag Manager?
But workspaces, in what way do you mean that workspaces should be a part?
So I'm taking Google Tag Manager as a comparison solution, and within Google Tag Manager, you get the workspaces, which, to my understanding, allows different teams, let's say, to work within one container so that it avoids people to erase the work of others. I was just wondering if on the field, you have the feeling that this workspace feature will be very valuable or not.
I think a workspace feature is valuable for organizations with a large number of editors that are in, or maybe, but in my experience and the companies that we have worked with, they don't have that many editors, so they would probably more have a need for like a permission model where you can say somebody can create a new tag, edit the triggers, add some new variables, but you need a specific role to publish it or some specific process to publish it. And maybe you can solve that with the workspace function in some way. It depends on how you build it, I think.
Okay, I'm going to have a very, very silly questions, Johan, but what is Next.js? Because, I mean, so far when it comes to SPA, I heard a lot about Angular, I learned a lot about React, but Next.js, I have to say that as I'm not a developer, I hardly ever heard this name before, and just would like to know if it's an evolution of the two previous that I just mentioned, or
yeah, maybe, of course. Next.js is the React framework for the web. Sounds kind of big, but it's there is this company called Vercel. They have created one of the I think it's one of the larger platforms for using React in a framework right now for the web, because React isn't really the whole framework. So with Next.js, you get the ability to have both front-end code and back-end code in one platform. So you get a way to create the APIs and to do all the metadata stuff and do everything. And they are also it feels like they are erasing the border between the back-end and front-end. You have this hydration process where everything is all the React components are rendered on the back-end side and then pushed to the front-end.
Okay, I'm going to have another silly question, and feel free to tell me, Ronan, it doesn't work this way. But what I'm seeing is like we have a lot of information systems which are SPA-based system, and is there a common framework that we could use in order to fit your way of tracking Matomo the best possible way for all of those together, or is it for each one you need to be very specific because there are many different SPA technologies?
I think you need to be very specific because all the SPA technologies has their own implementations, and they are working a bit different. If you are using say something based on React, you need to do it in one way, and you can use different routing implementations in your SPA framework, and they will all have their own hooks and their own way of actually making the virtual page view event occur. So
okay. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to try to ask you several questions. Do not hesitate to tell me if they are not appropriate, but more, let's say, more from a marketing perspective. How do you feel that Matomo is currently evolving in the Nordic market? I mean, is there really? I mean, is it like citizens in Sweden, for example, knows more about IT and then knows that there are alternative or are looking for alternative to Google? Is it because the Swedish Privacy Commissioner has recommended at some point Matomo? Is it because the technological provider on the market, for example, website creators, are in fact pushing Matomo? Because of course, if we have a Matomo Camp Nordic today, it's because there is a blossoming community in the Nordic market, you as well as representing it. And I just would like to know, how is it possible that Sweden and the Nordic countries, let's say in general, are really like taking the lead of Matomo right now? What is happening?
I think one of the big reasons that it has became such large is that many Swedish cities and also some of the government institutions have decided that we don't want any of our data in any data center that is not owned by a Swedish corporation or owned by themselves. And I think the GDPR is one part of it, but we also have this awareness around the whole topic. And I think Matomo is the closest option, or was the closest option for a couple of years ago, to Google Analytics that has had the whole market. And when they decided to change to a platform where they could actually take control of all the data, Matomo was the platform of choice. And since then, a lot of companies in Sweden have trying to learn and adopted the platform and are pushing it by responding to tenders and such things to these organizations. I think we are still a bit off in Sweden when it comes to the private sector and the companies. And it might improve there in the future, or we don't really know. It depends on how the legislation changes. I think there is also a lot of companies using Azure and Microsoft services, so the whole argument for owning your own data is weakening, I think, right now. But the idea that you can take control and actually use the data directly is very powerful.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, which is, so Sweden is clearly taking the lead. I mean, we can see it within the organization of Matomo Camp Nordics. I think all speakers are from Sweden. Just would like to know, unless I'm wrong, but to me that's the case. What is happening in Norway, Finland, and Denmark? Is it like, according to you, Sweden, which is leading the way, and then the three other major market in Nordic countries will follow? Or do you think that, or do they have specific laws? Or I mean, are you seeing more and more Norwegian clients coming to Whitespace or Finnish or Danish? Yeah, that's my question.
I don't think we are not seeing an increase in those markets for us yet, but we are primarily focused on the Swedish clients right now. So, but we can see some Norwegian people attending today that are using the platform. So I think there are maybe other providers in Norway and maybe even in Denmark that are also pushing for Matomo. It's such an easy platform to install, get started with, if you know a bit about Google Analytics from before, and if you know how to host a Drupal or WordPress site, you can basically host Matomo as well. The problem with Matomo starts when you have a lot of traffic, when you have millions and millions of views every day, then you need something more than just install it and run with it.
Okay. I do have another question. What are the current limitations of Matomo when it comes to the Swedish market? So is it a problematic, for example, with not everything is translated within the Matomo Swedish user interface? I don't know, is the IP address location detailed enough, specific enough? Are the plugins currently available within the Matomo marketplace correspond to the expectation of the Swedish market? This is my question.
I think that was 3 questions. So let's start with the first one. The translation for the Swedish Matomo is quite good, especially since the last one. I think we have been trying to use our resources to help out, providing new suggestions. There is a lot of, at least it was before, where different terms were used in different places in different ways, or maybe Google translated a word directly from English to Swedish without using the correct context and so forth. But I think that has been fixed in Matomo 5. In regards to the IP database, I think it's quite good. There is sometimes issues when people are using like the IP privacy functions on the iPhone can mess things up quite a bit. You can get a lot of weird traffic on your internet from the wrong countries and such things. But one of the more usual things that we have to do is that we are providing an alternate version of the database that is less exact, because some of the lawyers for our clients have said that no, we don't want to see what city they are from. That is too much. We only want to see the region. Can you please remove all information about cities and so forth? So, and what was the last question?
Yeah, the last question. The question was more about the Swedish market in particular. Yes.
Yeah, and the plugins. I think there is a lot of opportunity in the plugin space to create more plugins, but it's hard for users of the platform that don't use it every day to actually understand what is changeable and how can I, as a user, change the platform. What kind of plugins can I develop using this data that we have? Because that is not. It's easier to make changes to a web page. You can look at your web page and see, oh, I would like to have this picture large and this small. I need a function to read data from this calendar. I think working within the Matomo plugin market is harder because people don't really know what they can ask for. We saw earlier today when Thomas was talking about the personal information and like a scrubber for removing it. I think that is a great addition to Matomo to actually be able to take more control over what data gets into the database and how the data in the database is presented. The custom report, the premium plugin, is very useful for many of our clients.
Thank you, Johan. So in the chat, we are having information from Thomas explaining us that there is local software in Denmark, which has large market share. That there is definitely some needs from the Finnish markets as well. Okay. Is there any question you wish you have received today? I mean, Johan, like a question that you would like personally to answer?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I'm gonna try maybe to find one or two last questions in my head. Maybe I'm gonna make exactly the same as I did with Thomas this morning. Do you see any opportunities when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence with Matomo, or let's say specifically with the topic of today that you tackled? Is there any space of improvement thanks to AI that you can see, or any current trends that you can see on the market when it comes to Matomo and AI?
Well, there is this huge AI trend right now happening when everybody's trying to understand how they can use the large language models to interpret their data. And we do have a lot of data in the database that are open for exploration when you have collected it. It's not locked away in some way. But one of the problems we have in Matomo is that the tables in the database are not really structured in a way that we can use them for any AI applications. We have the raw data, but for most of our clients, we can only store the raw data for maybe a month, 30 days, or 60 days, or 90 days, and we don't really recommend to store any more of it. So we don't have the whole picture. And if you want to explore how the data is stored in the other tables in the database, you will see that they are not in a format that is easily accessible. And I think that is a way, it's available through the API, but it's kind of locked in if you need all of it in a fast way. So I think that is a issue from Matomo, and in regards to the AI part.
Thank you. Thank you. So there is no questions left within the chat. So if that's fine to you, Johan, I will then go for the break right now. And in 20 minutes from now, we will have the chance of having the next conference from Mika Shiren. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm pronouncing the first name and the family name in an horrible way. That's not on purpose. The conference will be about how to control the bots and save the environment and the hosting bill. Thank you very much once more, Johan, for your presentation today. I guess that if people want to connect back to you, they can easily type in your first name, so Johan Westin, within LinkedIn or anywhere on the internet, or then just contact Whitespace directly.
That is so it was nice.
Thank you, Johan.
Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye.
Yeah, maybe we will meet each other in Matomo Camp World Tour Edition next November. So the CFP have been open, so you can already send your conference proposal if you are interested in.